Good morning, and welcome to WPAT Live, Episode 1. I'm Pat Middleton, or Patricia Middleton, and I am your host. I'm also the founder of Poetricia Publishing, as well as The Village Authors. Someone just let me know if you can hear me. Let me know if the volume is good before I go on. I'm really excited. I'm trying to calm down. But if someone could just put in the comments, good morning, Deborah. Hey, Pam. If someone could just put in the comments that you can hear me, that the volume is good, then I'll keep going. Thanks, Pam. You is good. Thank you so much. Okay, so today is a very special day, not only because it is the launch of WPAT Live, but also it is my 11th anniversary as a published author. And I just thought today was the perfect day, after much procrastination, which we're going to talk about in this episode. Truly, in God's own time, I'm still learning that lesson all these years later as it relates to my literary journey. This is my baby, A Time to Write, published on March 20th, 2010. And I have so many memories of the day, so many memories of the days leading up to the day. But I just want to say happy anniversary. And I want to come back to this in just a moment. As a matter of fact, let me just start this broadcast off reading a poem from this book, this first book. It's divided into 6 sections: a time to pray, a time to love, a time to celebrate, a time to sing, and a time to write. I'm going to read a prayer because I need some prayer right now. I may look confident on this video, but yeah, I need a little prayer right now. So I'm going to read this little poem, and then we're going to get started. I want to give a shout out. I don't know if she's watching or not, but I'm certainly praying for her. Her name is Vanessa Thompson, my sister. And this poem is called Heal Me, on page 27 of A Time to Write. And as we're all praying for her and many others, I want to read this and dedicate it to her. Heal me. Dear Lord, I come before you with this simple little prayer. Heal me with your power and your tender loving care. My body needs a healing. My mind and soul do too. So please heal me all over. That's all I ask of you. Heal me. And I'm going to read one more just to celebrate this wonderful day, this anniversary 11 years ago. This is in addition to poems and other things that God gives me songs, even though I cannot sing. So I just want to read this poem, the lyrics to this, You Are There, page 110, and then I'm going to jump right into this broadcast, which, by the way, is the platform that I'll be using to share spiritual and natural, faith-based and practical tips for writers who are wanting to perfect their gift and who want to begin the self-publishing journey. Okay, you are there. Sometimes it seems the weight is more than I can bear. I open my mouth to say, life's not fair, but you are there. Lord, you are there. The days I smile as if I haven't got a care. The nights my soul cries out in deep despair. You are there. Lord, you are there. Whenever I need a friend, you've shown me time and time again that you'll be there. There, when Satan tries to tell me to beware, you give me the strength I need to take the dare. Taking the time to show me that you care, waiting for me when I kneel in prayer. Lord, you are there. You're always there. I reach my hand to you to lead the way. I love you more than words could ever say, for you are there. Lord, you're always there. And no one in this world could ever compare to you, for you are there. I'm going to say that line again. No one in this world could ever compare to you, for you are there. Lord, you are there. You're always there. So welcome again to WPAT Live, where we're sharing spiritual and practical tips for writers who want to perfect their gift and who want to begin that self-publishing journey. Today is the anniversary, the 11th anniversary of my first book. I've written 9 additional books since then, and I've assisted over 25 authors with beginning their own publishing journey. To God be the glory. Nothing of my own, as we're going to hear in this lesson today. Okay, so I will always have 3 books when I come before you. I will have one of my books, because I'm sharing tips that I've learned along the way. I'll have my notebook, because what is any writer without their notebook and their ink pen in case they forget something while they're talking and they can write it down off screen where you can't see. But most importantly, I will always have the book, the Word of God. And this is the book that has launched 1,000 more books in Christian writers all over the world. So let's jump into this book and get started with today's lesson. The word for today, excuses. I had a lot of them, but I'm not alone in that category when it comes to writing and pursuing publishing and doing what God called you to do. So we're going to be in Exodus chapter 3. We're going to be in Exodus chapter 4. It's a familiar, probably, passage to many of you. And it is Moses and his interaction with God after the burning bush. After the burning bush. God called Moses because he had a job for him to do. He had a job specifically designed that only Moses could do. And as we go through quickly this discourse between the two of them, we're going to see a lot of similarities between ourselves and Moses. So God starts off by saying, and let me remind you of the chapters again. That's chapter 3, and chapter 4 in book of Exodus. From chapter 3, it's verse 10 through 22, and in chapter 4, it's verse 1 through 14. So as the conversation begins, and this is after he calls out to Moses and he tells Moses to take off his sandals. He's standing on holy ground. This is after that. Here comes the command. Come now, therefore, this is God speaking. I will send you to Pharaoh that you may bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. Now, Moses knew who he was talking to. He knew who was talking to him. But Moses begins, excuse number 1. Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring these children out of Israel? God gives a rebuttal. Certainly I'll be with you. And here's a tip on how much I'm going to be with you. When you bring the people out of Egypt, you're going to serve me on this mountain. You're going to come back around. You're going to come full circle. Moses right away has another excuse. Number 2, when I come to the children of Israel and say what you're telling me to say, and they ask me, what is his name? who has sent you, what am I going to say? Again, God gives a rebuttal. You tell them, I am that I am has sent you. And then he gives Moses a glimpse, a prophetic glimpse of what is going to occur when he goes to Pharaoh, when he comes out of Egypt, when he gets to Canaan. He gives him a preview. And then that's the rest of that chapter. He spends 8 verses from 14 to 22 explaining to Moses, and he doesn't have to do that. Moses comes down. That should have been enough. Once you give me a glimpse of, isn't that what we're always asking for? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Show me, tell me, give me a sign. Moses had the whole story in those eight verses. And he still came back with another excuse. Verse 1 of chapter 4, excuse number 3. But what if they don't believe me or listen to me? They're going to say, the Lord has not appeared to you. And the Lord then shows him 2 signs and gives him another prophetic glimpse into the future. First, he turns the serpent into a rod. Then he turns his hand into leprosy and then turns it back. Physical signs. And then he finally tells him about the first miracle, the first plague, the water turning into blood. Again, Moses comes back with an excuse. Chapter 4, verse 10. Excuse number 4. I'm not eloquent. I cannot speak. I'm slow of speech and slow of tongue. Here comes God again with another rebuttal. Therefore, God said, who has made man's mouth? Who makes the dumb? Who makes the deaf? Have not I the Lord? Now go therefore, and I will be with thy mouth, and I will teach you what to say. Moses, still not convinced, comes back with the 5th excuse. Just send somebody else, basically. Now, I'm in the King James Version, which says, "O my Lord, send, I pray thee, by the hand of him who thou wilt send." In other words, send someone else. I'm not the one. At that point, the anger, verse 14 of chapter 4 of Exodus, the anger of the Lord is kindled against Moses. But does Moses get out of doing what he's been called to do? No. He says, I'm going to, basically, in the next few verses, is not Aaron the Levite your brother? I know he speaks well. So he's coming forth to meet you, and when he sees you, he'll be glad in his heart. I'm going to speak to Aaron. Aaron will be with you. I'm going to be with you, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you what to do and what to say. So those 5 excuses. And God is so patient with us, isn't he? Because at any time, God could have cut Moses off at whatever excuse, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and said, you know what? I'm the creator of the universe. I can go make me another Moses that's going to be obedient. But he strived with Moses. He was patient he was long suffering with Moses. God is love, right? And when we look at the 13th chapter of Corinthians, the definitions, the descriptions of love, one of them is long suffering. And isn't God like that? He is love. And he expresses that love in his long suffering with us when we're so full of excuses. Now, writers, upcoming writers, seasoned writers, those of you who are watching now, who may be watching later here on Facebook Live, or you may choose to watch on YouTube or listen on YouTube, WPAT Live, let me tell you something. God does not want to hear your excuses on why you haven't written the vision. on why you haven't pursued what he's laid on your heart to do and published the dream. But he's long suffering. He doesn't want to hear your excuses, but he's striving with you. He's long suffering. He keeps giving you nudges and nudges and reminders, just like he did with me. This book that I'm celebrating 11 years today, and all the other books that have come since then, this did not happen overnight. I had excuses too. Some of them might be familiar to you. Let's look again at Moses' excuses. Number one, he questioned his identity. He said, "Who am I that I should go and deliver the children of Israel?" He had an identity issue. He didn't know who he was. And sometimes, even though we're writing, I started writing at 14. And from 1978, so now you know, I'm proud of my age. I don't know why people hide their ages. I'm 57. So when I was 14, I started writing. From 14 to 27, I wrote basically, love poems, a few spiritual poems here and there, but most of them were love poems. But I was a writer. I knew who I was. I was a writer. At 27, when I got reclaimed and dedicated my life to God, my writing became more Christian in content, more worship, more prayer oriented, more evangelistic. And still there were a few love poems here and there. So I'm still writing at this point. I didn't start publishing until 1996. And that was but a newsletter, a poetry newsletter for single, separated, divorced, and widowed women. And I did that from 96 to 2002. And from 2002 to 2007 or 8, I found an online company, Cafe Press. You might have heard of it. And I had poetry postcards and calendars and things like that. All the while submitting poems to different journals, Women's Day journals, ministering poems at conventions and workshops and retreats and services, right? But still knowing in my mind that I've been called to publish as well as write, but putting it off because even though I knew I was a writer, I doubted my identity, just like Moses. Number two, he said, "Who do I tell the people sent me?" He had a problem with his authority. By what authority should I tell people that I'm doing this? And God said, "Tell them I am that I am has sent you." Many of you may not be pursuing what God has placed in your heart to do as it relates to writing a book or something else, because you are worried that people are going to question, well, who told her to do that? Well, who gave him the authority to do that? If God has placed a vision in you, given you a directive, a gift is not to be put up under a bushel or buried in the ground like the servant with the talents. There's a purpose behind it. And the number one purpose is to glorify him. Number two, to edify the body of Christ. Number three, evangelize the world. Those are the three purposes for the gifts he gives us. So that's your authority. Number three, we have a problem. They're closely related. We wonder, what qualifies us to do this? What qualifies us to do it? That's authority. But then he came back in verse 1 of chapter 4. People won't believe me. They'll say, God didn't send Moses. You have a problem like Moses and like I did for some time with credibility. People won't think I'm credible. They won't think I'm believable. They won't buy it. They just won't buy it. I want to tell you a little testimony. In 2007, something happened. There was, people use terms. I try not to use these cliches terms, but there was a shift that happened. I'm not going to say it was in the atmosphere. It was in me. A shift happened. After so many years of God using so many people to say, when are you going to write a book? Oh, I hear so many of your different poems from time to time. When are you going to write a book? It was almost as much as, when are you going to get married? When are you going to get married? When are you going to get married? You know, I'm sure you guys have heard that. So it was, when are you going to get a book? When are you going to write a book? And at the time, in addition to the vision he had given me, because I knew that I was going to write a book one day with all the poems that I had been writing over the years. But at that point, I just didn't think I could do it. I just didn't, raising two children as a single parent, serving the Lord in various auxiliaries, local, diocese, and national, full-time job. And I was just like, okay, I'm writing the poems. That's enough. And I remember my mother told me, she says, you're more than a poet. And I was like, yeah, my mommy, let me just write these poems, recite them, and that's enough. That's enough. So during this time, it's April of 2007. And I meant to have the test actually to show you. I'll show you next week. Essence Magazine had a test. It was called Follow Your Dreams. It was a full page, one of the pages, and there were maybe 12, 15 questions. The first question was, if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you do? And so I took the test. I'm taking the test. And I wrote, publish a book of poetry. And as it goes, all the questions take you through a journey. Whatever your first answer was, then it takes you through a journey of answering. How would you do it? Who would help you? What would you use as resources? And the very last question is, by the time you get to the end, you've accomplished that dream, or you're on the brink of accomplishing the dream. And the exercise ends. The last question is, what if it doesn't work? And what that meant for me was facing my greatest fear of, at that time, publishing a book and nobody would buy it. Now, that's nobody but the devil, right? The Lord's been giving you these poems, these anointed poems, and you've been writing all these years. You can't help but write. You're doing something else, and you start hearing verses and you're writing, and you mean to tell me nobody's going to buy the book? But that was my greatest fear. And so the exercise ended with the question, what would you do if it didn't work? And I had to say, what would I do if nobody bought my book? And at the time, my mother, awesome woman of God, Mother Phyllis Middleton, shout out, she was working in a domestic violence shelter. She's a children's advocate. And the first thing that came to my mind is I'm sitting there, what would I do if I wrote a book, published it, had a book signing, and nobody bought a book? I'd give them all to the shelter. I would just take the whole box of them and give it to the shelter. When I verbalized, when I answered, when I spoke back to that fear in me and said, well, if the biggest fear happens, I have an answer for that. I'm going to give them away. God was able to break the hold that fear had on me about publishing a book. That's how he did it. He did it by using a test in essence, and the last question being, what if it doesn't work? And me thinking, having a plan, having a strategy to fight against that fear. And once I verbalized that, and I went, oh, that's not so bad, actually. By the end of that year, December, and I still have that test, and I've used that test in different workshops that I've taught, by the way. I'm going to post it on some form. Before, this is a weekly broadcast, so one of the upcoming broadcasts, I'll tell you where it's posted. I don't want to lose my train of thought. By the end of that year, After God used that test and, of course, his wisdom and his spirit to get me to face that fear, to challenge that fear and have a strategy against that fear, that year in December, I purchased 10 ISBN numbers. Now we'll get into the technical side of what ISBN numbers are and who needs them and who doesn't and all that in a future episode. But for right now, I knew that I had more than one book in me. So it's 2007, it's December. I not only bought one, I bought 10. You can buy them in bulks, 1, 10, 100. I bought 10. It's still 2007. Now, I told you A Time to Write, my first book, didn't come out until 2010. Today is my 11th anniversary of the book signing. So that's 2007. But I was able to face the credibility issue. Moses' fourth excuse, verse 10, I'm not able. I'm slow of speech. I'm slow of tongue. And God said, what? I'm going to put my words, I'm going to be with your mouth, and I'm going to put my words in your mouth, and I'm going to tell you what to say. Some of you, man, I get this question a lot. How do you start? I want to write a memoir. I want to write an autobiography. I want to write about, this trial the Lord brought me through. How do I start? I don't know how to write. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. The ability issue. This was the ability. I'm not able. Moses was questioning his ability. So was I. So are you. So now at this point, I know I'm going to publish the book. I've faced my fear of what'll happen, my biggest fear. Why are all of our what ifs negative? I'm going to be talking about that in a future episode as well. Why are all what ifs negative? That's something we need to change our way of thinking. We need to change our perspective, as my pastor would say, Bishop Grant. Shout out, Bishop Grant. We need to change our perspective on so many things and not be so negative. What ifs can be good, but my what if was negative. What if nobody buys the book? Now we face number 4. He questioned his ability. And God is saying, I'm going to teach you. If I called you, if I gave you the gift, I'm going to show you how to use it. I'm going to give you help. I'm going to send you help. So this is what I want to say to you who may be wondering, how do you start writing? You're questioning your ability to be a good writer. You know what I had been doing all along in perfecting my gift? Taking writing classes, attending writing workshops. I don't just teach writing workshops. I attend writing workshops. Continuing education, that's perfecting your gift. After you pray, after you fast, after you get up and you say, Lord, you've given me this gift. I know what you want me to do with it, but I'm a little shaky in this area. You got to get to work. Faith without works is dead. So take some classes, attend some workshops, do some research. I can't even tell you how many hours a year, a day, a month, a week, researching grammar, English, fiction, nonfiction. I am still, even right now, perfecting my gift of writing, of publishing, of getting a hold of this beautiful English language and knowing how to express myself in the right way. Learning new words, learn a new word in the dictionary every day. Expand your vocabulary. And number 1, after the spiritual side of, making sure, you're where you are, you're in right standing with God, so your gift isn't polluted, it's perfected. You need to be reading. The best writers read. Read. If you want to be a good poet, read Christian poetry, read inspirational poetry. If you want to write an autobiography about your life, or a biography about someone else's life, read biographies, read memoirs, read autobiographies. If you want to write religious manuals on Sunday school lessons or ministry topics, you need to be reading. Expand your knowledge, your vocabulary. The better you are as a reader, the more you read, the better you'll write. Trust me. So those are some practical tips on how to do what? How to perfect your gift. How to answer number 4's issue on Moses's list of excuses and mine and yours. I am not able. When we question our ability, there's an answer. There's an answer. And the very last excuse, as we come to the end of this episode of WPAT Live, which is airing live on Facebook, but it's also going to be available on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. Watch and subscribe, or listen and subscribe, WPAT Live as well. Number 5, when Moses says, just send somebody else, just send by the hand of whom you will. I'm not the one. I am not the one. Now, again, I must remind you, it is remarkable how we talk back to God. He knew he was talking to God. You know, just like in Acts, when Peter had the vision and the sheet dropped down, and Peter says, not so, Lord. He knew he was talking to God. So sometimes we know exactly we're talking to God. We're like, nope, I don't want to do that right now. I'm in school. I'm getting ready to get married. I just had a baby. I just took on this new corporate job. I just bought a car. I'm in debt. I need to work another job. I don't have time to fulfill your purpose for my life, God. That's what our actions say. Moses said, just send somebody else to do it. Moses did not want to be accountable for what he had been called to do. Accountability, the very last bridge we need to cross, the very last excuse we need to conquer. Accountability. Now, with accountability, it's a buzzword, yes, in the business world and sometimes even in the spiritual world, but it's an important word, accountability. God, again, didn't have to, number 1, strive with Moses, have this long-suffering, gentle spirit where he just kept going back and forth with Moses. Even in the last excuse, he says, I will send you help. Not only will I be, it's not enough that, okay, Moses, it's not enough that I'm going to give you the words to say. I'm going to be in your mouth. I'm going to teach you. It's not enough that I'm going to give you power to turn serpents into rods and water into blood. That's not enough to use you to deliver the people from Israel, that I'm going to be the one to teach you. Me, I am that I am. That's not, okay, Moses. Okay. I'm going to send you some help. I'm going to give you an accountability partner. I meant to do my homework to see if was that the first accountability partner in the Bible? I'll have to look that up. But Moses, his natural brother, like my natural sister, Lisa, shout out to Lisa. She's my accountability partner. And I have a team. God gave me a village. My family is my village, and a few close friends, sisters in the Lord that push me, Deneen, Deborah, Sean. Oh, there were 4, and now my mind has gone blank. You know who you are. I love you. I just texted you last night. Pam Carr. See, I was going to remember. So those 4 sisters with this platform have pushed me. Yes, have held me accountable. My sister for years, my daughter, my mother, my brother. Yes, God will send you help. He will send you. He sent Aaron to Moses, but Aaron didn't do the whole job. Moses still did not get off from what his assignment was. Neither did I, and neither will you. God will send you accountability partners to help you accomplish the purpose that he has plan for that gift he's given you. Just like he was with Moses, so will he be with you. You have to be with him though, right? You got to trust the giver of the gift. You trust the gift that you have. You're confident in that gift. You got to be confident in the giver of the gift. And Lord, if I launch out into the deep with this book or this whatever, maybe yours isn't a book. Maybe yours is something totally different. But this still applies. It still applies. So I'm wrapping up. I'm winding down, or trying to anyway. I'm really excited. I want to thank you guys. I haven't read any of the comments while I've been talking. I read a few while I was on in the beginning, but I tend to lose focus and get excited. So I wanted to stay on track with my notebook and with my word. So that's going to do it for this episode of WPAT Live. Today's word was excuses. Every week, this is the platform. I'm going to give you a word, and then I'm going to look and see what does the word say about the word. And I may share a poem, I may not. But I want to thank you for watching, those who are watching now, those who will be watching later, whether it's here on Facebook Live, WPAT Live, or on my new YouTube channel, WPAT Live. Watch and subscribe there as well. In the coming weeks, we're going to be talking in depth about perfecting our gift of writing and pursuing a journey to self-publishing. Some weeks I will have guests on, some weeks I won't. You'll just be stuck with me. But God will always be with us. And so let's just close out with a word of prayer. Father, we thank you for being with us, for blessing us, for giving us gifts to glorify you, to edify your body, and to evangelize the world. Be with us on this day and help us to do what you want us to do with what you've given us. And help us to look in your word for examples when we face challenges within and without in pursuing our gifts and our dreams. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you guys for joining. It's been my pleasure. And I'm going to put my inspirational jazz hymn music back on and close out. God bless you. Have a blessed and wonderful day.